everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, president of Career Club, and welcome to another episode of Career Club Live. We're so glad to have our guests with us today. But before we go there, just wanted to share a little bit about some new services that we're offering around resilience training. If you're an HR leader or other executive and your workforce is really starting to feel burned out, stressed out, freaked out by everything that's going on in their lives, we would love to talk with you. We have great case studies now where we're helping companies drive higher engagement, higher productivity, lower attrition, lower absenteeism, and importantly, lower healthcare costs. So if you'd like to learn more about resilience and what we're doing with True North Radical Resilience, you can look us up at career.club. So with that infomercial out of the way, let me go ahead and read a little bit about our guest today. Very impressive credentials. Our guest today is Ellen Taaffe, who's a distinguished author, speaker, and clinical professor of leadership at the Kellogg School of Management, which of course is at Northwestern in Chicago, where she also leads the Women's Leadership Program. With over 25 years of corporate experience, Ellen has held leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies, including PepsiCo and Whirlpool, where she honed her expertise in brand strategy and leadership development. Her latest book, which we're going to talk a lot about, is The Mirrored Door: Break Through the Hidden Barrier That Locks Successful Women in Place, and offers insightful strategies to overcome the internal and external barriers women face in their careers. And with that, Ellen, welcome.
Hi, Bob. So glad to be here.
It's so good to see you. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Chicago. I'm actually in my daughter's bedroom in a condo in Chicago.
There you go.
Due to some work going on in my office.
Well, as we record this, it's almost 100 degrees in Cincinnati. I'm not sure if the heat dome is still over Chicago or not.
It's passed, fortunately.
Okay,
we're back to normal summer weather.
There you go. Well, we have tons to talk about, but as is our wont to do, we'd love to help folks just get to know you as a person a little bit first, and then we'll get into your great book. So just beginning, where were you born and raised? Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Philadelphia, and I grew up in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, my goodness.
6 kids. Yeah.
Wow.
Big change.
Very good. And then where did you go to university? I
went to University of Florida in Gainesville.
Oh, no. This interview may be over already. I didn't know you were a Gator. I went to Tennessee.
Go Gators.
I went to Tennessee, and Florida has been the bane of Tennessee's football existence for a long time. And then just you mentioned your daughter. Just a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I'm married and have 2 young adult daughters who are 22 and 25.
Excellent, very good.
One lives with us and one lives in California.
Ooh, fun, awesome. So I mentioned a little bit about your career with Pepsi and with Whirlpool, but do you mind just painting just a little bit of an arc of your career coming out of Florida?
Sure. So originally I started in sales for Quaker Oats, moved around the Southeast and moved up to Chicago where we were headquartered, and PepsiCo bought us. Prior to that, I moved from sales to brand management, which I really found was really the career I loved. And then once we were part of PepsiCo, I was leading the snacks division for Quaker, which reported up through Frito-Lay. And then I joined the PepsiCo strategy group, working in Indra Nooyi's group, which was a fantastic experience, and was there for a total of 2 decades in total. And then as the world of marketing was changing, I moved across industries. I moved into travel and hospitality, heading up brands at Royal Caribbean, and then moved to Whirlpool, coming back to the Midwest. And was head of the mass brands, Whirlpool and Maytag as well. I then moved into a small business that I ran that was consulting for product and brand strategy. Did that for 5 years and thought I wanted to sit on boards and retire somewhat. And I joined my first 2 boards and then felt like I need to do something else. And I joined Kellogg, where I got my MBA, and as part of the Women's Leadership Initiative. And then I started teaching a class there called Personal Leadership Insights. So now I've been at Kellogg since 2016 and serve on 3 boards have written a book and speak and do a little bit of coaching. I do coaching as part of my class and do a little bit on the outside. So I'm living that portfolio career life now.
You took the words out of my mouth. You are like we should just do a completely different episode on how to have a portfolio career. That's very, very cool and very satisfying, I suspect. And you continue to learn
Absolutely.
and grow. And then very quickly, when you're not doing all these amazing things, what do you do just for fun to relax, or passions, hobbies?
Well, right now we have a 6-month-old golden retriever. And so I'm doing a lot of dog walking, and with the help of a trainer, some dog training and building my muscles as she pulls me. I just came back from a walk a little while ago. So that's pretty dominant for us. And my husband and I moved from the suburbs into the city. And so we're really re-engaging with the city too. So, theater and restaurants, and he volunteers at the Field Museum. So we've kind of had this wonderful, later in life portfolio career, but back to the city, which I lived in before we got married, almost 30 years ago.
I love downtown Chicago. There's so much to do. It's so walkable, beautiful with the river and everything. So very fun. Well, congratulations on your grand dog. That's awesome. And sounds like fun. So let's jump into our topic. So you've written the book, and again, it's called The Mirror Door, and then the subtitle, Break Through the Hidden Barrier that Locks Successful Women in Place. What was the impetus? Like what happened, and why this book? Why now?
I was new at Kellogg in this leadership group, and I was at the orientation, and there was a really amazing female CEO shared her story. She opened it up for questions, and all the hands that shot up were men. And I just didn't get it. And I got to know all the women and realized how amazing they were. But I realized they're holding back. And that sort of started me on this journey of, like, I did that. I thought it would be different. Generations later, maybe there's something gendered going on. And as I looked into the research, we all know of that study. I think that, men go for a job with 6 of the 10 criteria, and we women hold ourselves to these sky high expectations that, like, no, I'm not ready for that. So I knew of that research, but I found there was all this other research that also said, like, even when we know we have the right answer, we hold back. And that sort of led me to this idea of we're reflecting, this mirror door concept, which I coined. It was sort of like we're reflecting in a distorted way many times, thinking that we're not ready or worthy to move forward into action, when all of the growth is on the other side. And we think it's like a door that's locked and blocked. And so, we may be held back by systemic or organizational issues, but we also might be holding ourselves back too. We might be locking ourselves in place by holding ourselves to these sky high expectations.
Yeah. So it's a really powerful word picture of the door that leads to another place. But when I approach that door, what I see is me. And if I'm following you correctly, then there's this perception of, like, I shouldn't be going through that door. I'm not qualified to go through that door. Yeah.
Yeah. It's this, so often we feel like, there's more I have to do. I need to get another degree, or I need to spend more hours preparing versus moving forward into action. And that's where we're going to grow. That's where we're going to learn, and we'll figure it out. And more than likely, we are ready.
Or if we haven't already figured it out.
Yeah.
So we can maybe dive into this, because for sure, I know we need to get into the 5 pillars, but we're already kind of on the concept that you talk a lot about of imposter syndrome. And there's self-talk, essentially, of an internal antagonist who's telling us these negative messages. Can you talk about that a little bit, and then what the antidote to that is?
Yeah. So so often you are right. Our mindset, or the voice in our head that holds us back, can can really influence and how likely we are to move forward. So, what I think about is having the self-awareness to understand what's that message that's in our mind or messages, and what are, the greatest hits keep coming back, and they're somehow like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not ready,
Yeah.
or those kinds of things. One of mine during the process of this book was, who am I to write a book?
Yeah.
And, if I had someone who said that to me, as a coach, I would suggest to them to do a counter to that. So if that's sort of the antagonist, what if you were the protagonist, the lead of your story? What's the opposite? And really channel that voice, channel being, I own my story. So from, who am I to write a book, to I have something to say that could help people. And if I suspended all that judgment, that might be like, I don't know. What would I do if I believed I have something to say that could help people? Or why not me? Or whatever that sort of anecdote would be. What action would I take next? And in my case, when I was writing the book, it was wake up at 5 or 6 and sit in the chair and write. Or later on, once the book came out, it would be create a LinkedIn newsletter or whatever those things are, so that I could move into that. So it's not that that negative or that challenging voice doesn't hit us again, but it's the discipline of, how do I counter it? What's the opposite of that would enable me to take action?
Yeah, and like you, I do a lot of executive and career coaching, and it is amazing. And to some extent, it's probably more pronounced with women, but it's certainly not limited to women. And we're somewhere in our nature is, and maybe it's all kind of gets way reptilian, just in fear and self-protection and things like that, and not being vulnerable. So we do things to protect ourselves and protect our egos. But it is so self-limiting. And when we can stop listening and start talking to ourselves in more positive ways, and I like how you phrased it, Ellen, like, but what could happen? What would you say? And start to go down that positive road, that protagonist road. I'm a huge believer in autonomy and agency. And we have the freedom to choose our attitudes. We have the freedom to choose our actions. We can give those to other people, but they can't take them from us. And so what I love about your message is, how do we take control back of something that was always ours to have to begin with? Do you think, Ellen, any of this, is grounded in childhood at all, or are these things that we learn as adults?
I think it's both, but I think it's rooted in childhood. And a lot of times we get some really well-intentioned messages about what success looks like, or advice, so things like, for me, don't be a braggart, or, but at the same time, getting a message, you got to toot your own horn. But so if I have a message of don't be a braggart, and so when I have an opportunity that I face, I might be holding back and thinking like, oh, I don't want to be pushy, I don't want to be too big, I'm holding back and making myself small. And it's why I like your comment about agency is so important, that why not play a bigger game? And how do we coach ourselves to do that too, as well as, have that support from people around us, whether it's a coach or a colleague or friends as well. But we get a lot of messages, and I think that you are right that men and women, regardless of gender, we can feel imposter syndrome. I think what happens frequently for girls really latch on to school. And, there's a rubric to understand exactly what do you do, hard work and focus on this, and I can get the gold star, or I can get the grade, the AP classes. So you have 70% of high school valedictorians right now are young women. And then I think they get in the workplace. And so frequently there's a lot of, it's gray. There's no rubric, and it's hard to navigate and know what to do. But we are, have this message of be perfect, get it all right, be certain, and all these things that I think are more frequently messages that girls are given, but also pick up on. And it helps make them successful. It helps make us successful, but we have to be flexible to trying some new things and trying to figure out how do we navigate the workplace.
How much of what we're talking about right now and these sort of what I'll call self-imposed barriers, have you observed, and how much of this is coming from your own experience?
It's a bit of both. I think that in my experience, I learned that I would go into new situations. I would move forward into action, but I wouldn't always be the best of myself. I would too frequently go into a new situation, a new job, or even, late in my career, join a new board and think I shouldn't speak up enough until I really know what I'm doing, until I really know this industry. And for too long played the observer. And I need to recognize, for me personally, I need to recognize that they hired me for what I can contribute, and my fresh eyes, even though I don't know this industry yet or this company, can really add value. So there's some of that certainly is me, but I see it in the research. I see it in the students that I teach and women that I have coached as well. So, and so often there's early success and then getting to a place in our careers where it's like, what happened? I was sort of the golden girl. I was the superstar, and I'm suddenly plateaued. What happened around me? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's the expectations of taking more risks, of making decisions, of confronting conflicts. Some of these things, they're part of leadership. And sometimes we can be playing it safe or busying ourselves with these things that worked in the past instead of moving into action, into uncharted territories, which is hard. But that's where all the growth is.
Exactly. So as we kind of double click on some key themes here, your book outlines what you call 5 perils of success, and probably ask 2 questions at once, and then you can go with it. It's an interesting phrase, perils of success. And then do you mind kind of unpacking what those 5 are real quick?
Sure. So they're preparing for perfection, eagerly pleasing, fitting the mold, pushing pedal to the metal, and patiently performing, which is the awaiting to be noticed. And in each one of them, they're incredibly powerful, but there is a double-edged sword to them, in particular as expectations rise. And it's both personal, it can be stress or some sort of internal concern, but it's also perception. So I'll walk through one of them for you.
Yeah, I want to do just super quick. Perils of success. Is that like fear of success? Or do you mean something different by that?
I do mean something different. Great question, though. I think these are tendencies that make us successful, but they have this unintended peril to them that we don't always see, and that's what makes them and it's somehow we hold back on doing something in each one of them, thus the mirror door, as we continue to do what's worked before.
Okay, so that makes total sense. So go ahead. I would love to hear you unpack one.
Yeah. So for example, preparing to perfection. I mean, who doesn't want that on their team? Someone who delivers excellence, who's like a go-to person. They get it done, and it's kind of bulletproof. You can count on this person, and it becomes for the person who has this tendency, it becomes our identity. It feels pretty good. It's sort of the gold stars in the workplace early on. But what happens is, as expectations rise and our jobs expand, there's not the time for all the preparation that we once did. And we are called to make decisions with incomplete information. We're looking for leaders to take calculated but more risks than someone who's a perfectionist who had the crutch of all that preparation is not able to deliver. And so what happens personally is a lot of stress. My students say FOMO, fear of missing out. This is one that's like FOMO, fear of messing up. That like you're used to like always being right, accurate, on time, everything's perfect, and that identity is so big. And so this can also lead to that person who you always wanted on your team, and as there's a move into leadership, this person is the person who's the worker bee but not the leader of the team. So it's really important to sort of know where you are and know that through all that work that was already done, you're likely more ready to make decisions and take risks than you realize. This one is also classically not always the best delegator. It can sometimes be lead to micromanagement. And so we really need to get the help and advice of our stakeholders or our boss to understand. I put this in grade terms because this is like the straight A student, that like, where do I deliver my A's, my B's, and my C's? When can I come in with a draft? And when do I really need to have like everything perfect on this deck or whatever that is? So getting that help, both from learning how to delegate and delegate with here's the outcome with some leeway around how people get it done, on their own development, but also getting help from others too. And so this is this thing that someone had huge success early on, and then frequently is like, I don't get what happened to me. I'm no longer the star.
I can see this too in the scenarios where I'm really good at doing the work. I may not be as good, at least today, leading the team that does the work. Right.
Yeah.
So that's turning the best salesperson into the sales manager, I think, is a typical example. Right. Bob's an amazing salesperson. Let's put him in charge of all the salespeople so he can spread his, expertise to everybody. And it's like that. I'm not good at that, at least today, because I haven't been given the skills, because that's a different job that you're asking me to do. Even though I understand their role, this is a new role for me. Is some of that part of what's going on too?
It could be. I think it's more around moving into when we don't have as much as we once did as far as preparation and our relationship with risk. So often this is I can put in the hard work and my risk is gone because I know hard work and the direction or the rubric helps me to get the thing done. But that's just not the reality of the workplace. We have uncertainty around the decisions that we make. And so it's really understanding with the risk we're willing to take, here's my recommendation, those kinds of things. And that's where when we resist doing that, we become the worker bee, which is great if that's what you want to do. But often that achievement in academics and then early in our career, we want to do more of that. And I also think this is, in all of these, there is like I would say in my own example, maybe I'm more of a selective perfectionist where when I go in new, like I don't want to raise my hand or the point in the meeting unless I know it's going to be a good one. And I need to get over that. Some of the things about like go early when other people can build on your ideas or recognizing that you can figure it out. You might have said something, maybe it fell flat or no one jumped on it, but that's okay. You survived. Yes. So the risks appear larger than they truly are in this tendency. And
I empathize with that one actually, because my bias would be to listen first and kind of get the temperature of the room and the personalities and how everybody interacts but I have been guilty and been told very directly in a previous life, like, we need you to be contributing more. Like, that there's a
Yeah.
reason you're at this meeting, and we
Yeah.
need you to step up a little bit. And then two, it's also weird. I don't want to go off on a crazy tangent, but in a hybrid work world where there's some people who are physically in a room and some people who are dialed in, those dynamics make it hard to contribute because you can't see everything that's going on. And is this an appropriate time for me to jump in or not? Versus if you were in the room, you could read the room literally and know, when's a good time to jump in.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's most of the workplaces now. But I like the feedback you got that was, pretty much telling you, you deserve to be here. We want to hear what you have to say. And so on all of these, and in the book, I have managerial considerations of like, how do you help someone when they're going through this? And it's through prioritization, but it's also helping them to see you're going to have to move forward without all the perfection, all the preparation, and what's your best, calculated guess for what we should do, or what's your recommendation. So it's really important to coach people who have this, because they certainly deliver excellence, but they are probably more ready than they think to make a recommendation.
So let's review these perils one more time, and I'm going to probably paraphrase here just a little bit on some, but we've been talking about striving for perfection, being eager to please, trying to fit the mold, pushing too hard, and waiting patiently. Do people tend to be one of those kinds of personas, or can we have multiple of those things going on, or is it you can be any of those at a point in time?
You can have multiple of those. And sometimes people talk about, oh, I was that, like I was patiently performing earlier in my career. I learned I had to speak up and advocate for myself and share what I wanted and what I've done. So I hear that a lot, but sometimes, and when I go out to speak in organizations, I always ask by a show of hands, what do you resonate most with? And it's always interesting. I would say perfection and pleasing is always pretty high. And then some of the other ones sort of pop up as well. But you can feel multiple ones for sure.
Yeah. Because we have limited time, I'd like to just do one more of these that you see being fairly common, particularly for women.
Yeah, I would probably say eagerly pleasing. And, this is the person who's the glue that holds the team together. They read the room, meaning reading the group, and are always sort of putting it on even keel. They have great, strong relationships. So all these wonderful things. The catch with this one, or the peril, is when they're so other oriented that they've neglected their own needs. And that results in the workplace of not addressing conflicts, or not raising opinions, not setting boundaries. And this is one where the flip from a mindset standpoint, the switch, I should say, is to recognize how strong the relationships are. The person who feels this has such strong relationships that can withstand some conflict, can withstand you raising issues or setting boundaries. So I have a whole section of like how to set boundaries quickly and easily and firmly, because sometimes we think we're doing that and we're being so nice about it that it's missed by other people. Or sometimes the feedback is too nice and the person thinks like, oh, that's not a big deal, even when it is. So this is one where trust in your relationships, take the smallest step, tapping into the care you have of other people and of the team, the company, to say what's on your mind. And sometimes just even having like, in 5 words, what I'm worried about is, what I'm wondering about is, what I'm concerned about is, in finding your language for how you can raise something that needs to be said, that is really valuable. And so this is where, the person can go from feeling like, wow, they're, the beloved person on the team, to feeling like they're assumed to always pick up the slack, or those kinds of things, and not being seen as the person who could lead the team to have to confront conflict, to get after the real issues that are going on, and to give strong, fair feedback to others, which is such a part of leading others as well.
Well, I might be marrying and hopefully not conflating, but marrying a few ideas here together. So before we started pressing record, we were talking about our mutual friend, Dory Clark. And Dory and I were having a conversation about human resources professionals often are very giving kinds of people, and they really devote a lot of themselves and get great satisfaction from helping other people with their careers, often to the expense of their own, right? And that they're so busy giving and serving and helping other people that they're not kind of tending to their own career, which is problematic by itself. But it also kind of makes me think about what you were sharing earlier with the antagonist and protagonist kind of thing. Well, that's kind of selfish to worry about me. And I just need to kind of do what I need to do. And the protagonist, I would hope, would say, but gosh, Ellen, don't you want to have more impact? Don't you want to help more people? If you could develop some of these other things in your own career and get some of these experiences, you would actually be able to multiply the impact and have a positive impact on even more careers. Isn't that more attractive than swimming in a smaller pond? How do you react to that?
Oh, I like that a lot. I mean, I think that, I would even take it a further step into our conversation of what messages, did you get as a kid? Like, don't rock the boat. Don't be pushy, or whatever those things that were well intended, but stay with us and form, are sort of rooted in that antagonist. And to your earlier point about like having your own agency, don't be the supporting player, be the protagonist and the center of your story. And what you just said about you could have so much of a bigger influence if you stepped into that. Right. So I'm tying it all together, but I love that.
Well, that's what I love about your book, because it really addresses people and like how we actually operate. And sometimes it's a very good version of ourselves. And StrengthsFinder has I guess in their vocabulary, things have balconies and basements. And you're sort of identifying those are balconies for sure, but there are some basements. And how do we kind of have a watch out for those? You talked about these things are risky, and like I'm not sure what's on the other side of that door, and it might hurt. At least that's my fear, is it might hurt or somehow not be good for me. And I know we're going to end up here anyway, but how do we kind of combat that fear and get the courage to step through that door?
I mean, I think that we need to do a realistic assessment of where are we, and are we ready to do that, or ready enough to do that? We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have 10 of 10 of the skills on the, it's truly a company's wish list. And so that we can just, call on ourselves, but also get some other feedback on that too. But I think it takes courage. I mean, I am in the role that I'm at, I, of course, get a lot of people asking me, how do I build my confidence? And in my view, what we need is courage to move into uncertainty, to uncharted territories that feel a little scary, but we're more equipped and more ready than we realize. And if we move forward and, even in the smallest way, tapping our courage to do that, we will build our confidence. Confidence is the outcome, but the real prerequisite for opening that door is courage. And I think we have so much more of that. Like when I do workshops, or I say, talk to the person next to you and share some way that you were courageous. And it might have just been showing up today, not knowing anyone at this conference. But it might have been you've done some pretty big things. So we have more courage. And that's what we got to remind ourselves to move into action. And we usually have learned whether we've won or, something didn't work out, we learned a lot from it and we're stronger the next time. So it's really a positive cycle when you move into action as well.
If I could build on just a couple of things that you're saying, because they really resonate. One is, building to confidence. And for a lot of people, confidence is not the same as cocky. It's not the same as arrogant, right? Confidence is a reasoned self-belief, right? A substantiated self-belief. And when we're working with our clients and people who listen to this podcast regularly know that we work a lot with people in job transition, they're lacking in courage, because something's happened or whatever. And so it's kind of, I won't say robbed them, but it's certainly pulled away from their courage. And to build on your point, what we try and help people is getting them rooted all the way back down to what are their convictions? What are their self-beliefs about themselves? I believe this is absolutely true, whether it's my personality and the traits, that I've been given, or my experience and things that I've got a demonstrated track record of being good and stuff like that. I mean, it's documented, right? Things that maybe I'm passionate about. And sometimes I hesitate to use the word passion because for some people that sets too high of a bar, but I'm interested in, I'm curious, I'm motivated by these kinds of things. And this is all true. Sometimes it's very helpful to get feedback from other people. Like, when you see me at my best, what do you see? Right. So getting sort of your assets collected, right, of who I am and what I am. And then that starts to build a narrative in your mind that enables that courage and which leads to confidence in the model that we teach. And then we take it one step further. And the beautiful thing, this is a leadership thing, when we're confident, and again, not cocky and not arrogant, but when we're appropriately confident, confidence is contagious. When you believe, you make me believe. And think about like the very best speakers, like when you really believe they're speaking authentically, they're speaking from their heart about something, like that's inspiring. Like, you want to follow that person. Confidence is contagious in a very good way. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I really love that. And the convictions, I think that's getting back to sort of what your values are, who you are. In my class that I teach, it's about who you are, who you want to be, and how are you going to get there. And it feels very similar to the idea of your convictions, your values. I'm guessing the strengths as well. And how do you sort of recall? I feel like there's a little bit that maybe you're when you're in transition, your confidence or your courage is shot, perhaps.
100%.
And so you're sort of recalling through way of convictions that, you know what, I really can do this, and I'm interested in this. And I particularly love curiosity, because I think that's, getting curious about, like, well, they think I can do this, but I'm feeling afraid. Like, what's that about? And when we get into curiosity, I feel like that's sort of an antidote to judgment. Both for
I've never heard that. Tell me, that's cool.
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean.
I tell my students that getting curious, especially if you're going into a conversation where you've got a lot of negative feelings or you're worried about it, go in with curiosity, because I think that it takes you out of judgment. And it, and I think we can put that curiosity on, like, whatever we are feeling, or, I'm feeling scared about this thing, or I feel knocked down I got laid off, or whatever those things are, or I'm about to have this difficult conversation. And it takes us out of judging other people too. Like, oh, they said that, I wonder what that's about. Tell me more. It helps you also move into powerful questions, which I also think is like curiosity. Powerful questions are also like superpowers. I think
Well,
too.
what that reminds me of is the little model of, you know, slow to speak, quick to listen, and
Mm,
modify it to your well-made point, slow to judge. So be slow to
yeah,
speak,
yeah.
quick to listen, and slow to judge. And that is like emotional intelligence, I think, on a very, very high level. And then
Hmm.
the ability to ask great questions, really it's just engendering the listening part. I want to know more. I want to know more. Tell me more.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So thinking about, because you get to work with a lot of young women, or you can kind of go back and talk to 25, 28-year-old Ellen. Yeah. But what are some
Hmm.
of the key lessons is people are very early on in their careers that you share with people that play into what we're talking about?
Um, I think my biggest one is you're more ready than you think, and you're ready to move into action and to learn from it too. I
Mm-hmm.
always say also choose wisely in your partner, in your company, in go after different jobs even within I spent time in corporations, and I think going into choosing roles where you can learn more than everyone wants that job, I think is so important. When I look back to the roles that really mattered, they were a major expansion of my own learning.
Mm-hmm.
um, I also think relationships are where it's at, building trusting relationships, and that enable you to be more of yourself. We could get into a whole authenticity conversation, but working for people, working with people who see you at your best and who help you to get better, I think is really powerful too.
Yeah.
So um,
Yeah. Really, really good stuff. And, you know, part of what we share with people building on all of that is, and it gets really back to your courage. Like, don't be afraid, try things. Like you haven't eaten at the career buffet before. Like you don't even know what all is available. And you started in sales, which was great, and I'm sure you did really well. But you're like, I want to try something else. I want to try brand management. Marketing sounds like fun. Let me go see what that's all about. So, for me, as for a young person, it's almost a test for negatives. At least don't go start doing things you don't enjoy or isn't in your gifting. Like I'd make a terrible accountant, so that would just hurt. So I married an accountant instead. Um, but to not be afraid, and then I think it gets back to, like you said, just being curious and being courageous. So that maybe that tees us up for the last thing. What is your kind of parting bit of advice for somebody who's listening to this? And honestly, I know this is directed towards women, but so much of what you're talking about resonates with me personally. And as I think about my client base, which has a lot of men in it too, I think a lot of these are universal truths. But what would you want to end on?
my hope is that people would tap into their care and their courage to move forward into action, because I think that more likely than not, you're more ready than you think.
Amazing. I'm so glad that we got introduced by one of the Band of Sisters, which is another
Yeah,
phenomenal book. If You Should Smile More. And there's definitely some Venn
great.
diagram stuff going on between your book. And I think that you all complement each other extremely well. Ellen, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to meet. Thank you for writing your
Me
book.
too.
As the father of a daughter and even our three boys, but for our daughter, to be courageous, that you're more ready than you think that you are, to just go act, just go, and it's going to be okay. You're more ready than you think that you are is such an encouraging, positive, action oriented kind of message that I'm really glad you took the time to write the book. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah. And if people want to do your LinkedIn newsletter, get the book, are there other resources, Ellen, that you want to point people to if they want to reach out to you directly?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best way. I also have a website, ellentaaffe.com, so you can see, past articles and podcasts and all of that. And the book's available on Amazon and where books are sold, The Mirrored Door.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to listen. Again, I'm just feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to get to know Ellen here and learn more from her. I hope you did too. And hope you'll tune in next time for the next episode of Career Club Live. Thank you. I know